Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Diaz, Executive Director of United Way of St. Charles. Welcome to this edition of Living United, a local talk show that gives you a closer look at the work United Way is doing in our community. United Way of St. Charles is a local, nonprofit organization committed to bringing the community together to deliver lasting changes throughout St. Charles Parish in the areas of education, income, and health. Founded about 60 years ago, United Way is run by a local, all-volunteer board of directors made up from community leaders right here in St. Charles Parish. Through our 100-plus programs and 28 partner agencies, it's estimated that United Way serves over 40,000 people each year in this community. On today's episode, we'll visit with two of our partner agencies. Up first is the Greater New Orleans Therapeutic Riding Center, here to speak about some new things happening at the farm. Also here with us today from the only battered and homeless women's shelter in St. Charles Parish is the Executive Director of Alpha Daughters of Zion. Joining us next on Living United is Anita Hefler from the Therapeutic Riding Center. Anita, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate your time. Maybe a good place to start is if you could tell folks a little bit about the history of the Riding Center.
The Riding Center was incorporated in 1993 and held its very first class on October 3rd, 1993. So in 2 weeks, we'll be starting our 24th year of operation.
And what drew you to that? How did that end up existing? What need did you see?
Well, I've always liked horses and have been horseback riding most of my life, and had owned my personal horse. I was introduced to the World Quarter Horse Show, which is like the World Quarter Horse Show is the Super Bowl of quarter horse shows. So everybody that's been competing throughout the country gets so many points per whatever event they entered in, and the final big thing is to go to the World Quarter Horse Show where you compete with all these other high-scoring individuals. When they opened the show in Oklahoma City, they brought in a therapeutic riding center that was from that area. And they brought in all the riders that they had. They had the independent riders that didn't need any assistance, and also the ones that needed the two sidewalkers and the horse leader. And their faces, they were just so proud to be there. And I couldn't get those faces out of my head. It was a 3-day trip back home, and that was all I could think about. So I actually volunteered with a therapeutic riding center in Franklinton for a year. Whether they had classes or not, I was over there because I wanted to know what all is entailed in running a therapeutic riding center. Because I wanted to be sure that this is something that I wanted to pursue. I didn't want to go and start something and then go, you know what, this is a whole lot of work, and then decide that this isn't really what I want to do. So doing that for a year, I liked it enough and had enough of the commitment that I wanted to do this and bring it here, because we didn't have, or we don't have anything this local here. No kind of service like this.
It's one of the reasons I like talking to you and letting the public hear your story, is that it's a very unique and needed resource, and there just isn't another one. So let's talk about who needs that service. You mentioned riders who need assistance, use the word therapy. Tell us what you do. What are the services?
We provide therapeutic horseback riding services and also hippotherapy services for disabled individuals. And it could be a physical disability or an intellectual disability, it doesn't matter. Pretty much anybody with any disability can participate in therapeutic riding. There's really only two occasions where somebody would not be able to participate. About 25% of individuals with Down syndrome have something called Atlantic axial instability, where the first two vertebrae in the neck don't align properly. In 25% of those cases, they do not align properly. In that case, they are not allowed to participate. Any kind of jarring motion could jam the spinal cord and could paralyze them. So we don't want to hurt anybody
Sure.
with what we do. The other case would be if somebody has rods in their back, they are not recommended to participate in it because it stabilizes the spine, but the movement of the horse, because there's no movement where the rods are, you get excessive movement above and below the rods, so you can give somebody whiplash. And again, we don't want to hurt somebody on horseback. But any other time, what's so beneficial about the horse is the movement that the horse provides. It's a three-dimensional movement that's the most similar to the human walking gait. And it cannot be duplicated as closely as the human gait by anything. You can send kids to the doctor's office and they can put them on a therapy ball. It's just not the same as sitting on a horse. And if you look at somebody walking next to a horse, you can see if the volunteer happens to be walking next to the horse and you watch a rider, it's very neat to see how the movement is very similar.
Interesting. Now, one thing that I think always helps folks in the audience, like when I do a talk about what the United Way does, is to really paint put a face to things, to reduce it down to a success story, if you will. Mm-hmm. Are there any stories, participants? I know we don't want to use names to protect people's privacy, but I mean, are there folks here in St. Charles Parish that are there now? Or,
yes, we have quite a few riders from St. Charles Parish. One of them is a little boy that's 6 years old who has spina bifida, and he's actually been riding with us for about 3 or 4 years. He was told, or his parents were told when he was very little, that he was never going to walk and not to have any high expectations of him. He's pretty much going to just be in a wheelchair. At the time, we had just started the pilot program where we wanted to work with the kids that were 4 and under. Therapeutic riding is recommended for kids 4 and up, and there really is no upper limit. We had a lady that was 72 that rode with us. But we had 5 kids that we accepted in this pilot program, none of whom were walking, with various disabilities. So this particular little boy has spina bifida. We had 2 with cerebral palsy, one that was just a delayed diagnosis. He really didn't have a diagnosis other than he wasn't meeting all of his age marks. So this little boy then came, I think after 4 weeks. His parents had come home from work and they'd put him outside on the porch, and he had a walker, but he was never really interested in getting it and using it. So they were doing whatever they were doing to get ready for dinner or anything. They turned around and they saw him with his walker cruising back and forth on the porch. And all they could do was really hug each other because they were told that he would never really even attempt that. He's now walking with crutches, but
Wow.
don't call them crutches, they're sticks. He's walking with sticks now. He went to Children's Hospital, and I don't know if you've been to Children's Hospital before, but it's a really happy place. The kids love going over there. The therapists and all the staff that work over there really, make the kids their own. So Brian went, So he went ahead and got way ahead of Mom with his sticks to make his way to see his friends. And Mom came in, and the doctor that had told her that, don't expect too much, he's not going to amount to much, happened to cross paths with her and asked her how he was doing. And all she did was point down the hallway, and his jaw literally hit the ground because that's not what he expected ever.
So how old is he now?
He's now 6.
So you're literally talking about the difference between a child walking or not.
Right.
And how rewarding is that for you? What does that feel like?
I don't get paid as an executive director, and one of the parents came to me. They had their little boy on their shoulders, and he wanted to know, do you really not get paid? And I said, no, I really don't get paid. I was finishing tacking up the horse and went over back to him, and I said, I'm sorry, I really do get paid. I said, I get paid when I see that your child does something that he wasn't ever expected to do, or when I see a smile on a parent's face when they see their child do something that they were never expected to do. The reward, you can't put a price on that.
I'm sure. I can't imagine. How I know the answer to this, but for the audience's benefit, what's the United Way involvement?
United Way grants us money to keep the program going. Some of our kids obviously can't pay, well, not obviously, some of our riders have trouble with the $25 fee, so they get a no fee or half a fee to keep the program going. And really, our budget's very small. The United Way has about a 25% help with our budget. Without that, we couldn't do what we need to do to maintain the horses, the supplies for the horses, and to allow the kids to ride.
So just to be clear, and I'm sure the audience will draw this conclusion or figure it out, but you know, you're literally the sole provider in the area, and maybe sometimes the last resource for a child born with a disability or some kind of genetic disorder, their chance to walk. Do any insurance companies reimburse you for that?
They do not, although flexible spending will pay for it. Okay. If somebody really can't afford it, we don't turn them away for their inability to pay. We always, somehow, somebody or something comes through to help pay for these riders. And it is, for many of them, this is something that other siblings can't do. This is something that is very special for them to do. Yes, sure, my sibling can play soccer and he can play baseball. In this case, the horse takes over with 4 legs where the 2 legs don't work or don't work quite as well. But this is their thing. Some of our riders come to the farm and it's not the riding center or it's not Miss Anita's farm. This is Joey's farm, or this is
And it's not
Zach's
a doctor's
farm.
office.
No, it's not a doctor's office at all. It doesn't look like a doctor's office. And the environment, being outside, the kids don't realize the therapeutic and the therapy benefits that they're getting because it's not a doctor's office. So it's a very relaxed atmosphere. It's also a social thing for some of these riders because with the 2 sidewalkers that they have,
they develop a relationship.
Yes, they
Sure.
develop a relationship, and they are being encouraged to do whatever task they're asked to do.
So let me ask you this question. When you think about now a fairly good sized facility, outdoor, we're in South Louisiana, how has the recent flooding, for example, affected you all?
Well, I don't know if you remember from 2012 with Isaac, we flooded with Isaac. We had 4 feet of water at the farm, in which case we had to shut it down for, I think, 2 or 3 months to get things back together. We were worried about getting flooded. It's been extremely wet. Had to cancel the last 2 weeks of classes in July because it was so wet. We luckily didn't have any flooding, other than being completely soaked. But we were asked for assistance with a couple of horse owners that did have severe flooding. One of our volunteers had called and asked and begged, actually, to see if we would accept 2 horses from somebody that they knew and get them out of Lamar-Dixon. So the lady had 5 feet of water at her house. All of her pastures had flooded. She lost all of her chickens. I mean, she really lost everything. Even though it was still quite close to, we're not sure we're safe, because we didn't want to accept anybody on the farm, and then we would have to evacuate and then have to worry about evacuating anybody else that we accepted. But we took them because conditions were really not all that great where they went. So we completely understood. We've been there. We've been in that position. So we took the 2 horses from St. Amant there at the farm. And then 3 days later, we took 3 additional horses from St. Gabriel.
So how many horses would you have normally?
We have 8 horses and a donkey.
Okay, so
And so now
eight,
we
eight
have-
horses and a donkey. But that's a sizable increase
It
then
is. Oh,
to
yes.
your own operations, to your
Yes.
expenses, right?
Yes. Expenses, yes and no. Picking them up, providing for them. The problem we're running into is hay. People were donating hay, but I don't know where the hay came from, and some of it was not horse hay. Because of all the rain, we're having some issues with our own supply of hay. So hay was a problem, or is a problem and concern. And then providing the feed. The particular horses from St. Amant were not up to date with all of their shots, so we had to get that done. And the blood tests that they have to have every year. So, and then most of all, it's time. Also, the 3 St. Gabriel horses were in the arena. So thankfully, we were on our break. But they were waiting for a ride to Texas, so as soon as they went to Texas, we were able to start back up again. And
Gotcha.
we're back in the saddle again, doing
All
our
right.
classes.
Literally
Yes.
back in the saddle again, right? So a lot of that conversation was about weather. I know you have some exciting news on how your center will be able to remain open in summer months a little
Yes.
more, and tell the audience about
Well, one
that.
of the biggest problems that we have is the heat and the sun. We usually shut it down. Well, we always shut it down in August because it's just too hot. The heat index is like 101 to 105. It's no fun for the volunteers. The horses don't appreciate it much. And our kids, our riders, don't last very long with that heat. So last year you had selected us for the Day of Impact for the United Way, and that really was the impetus to really get serious about getting a covered arena. And because you guys started on it, we were able to build on that. And then in June, we were invited to the Oscar Thomas Foundation, to their office. You can't apply to them for anything. They have to invite you, and you have to plead your case. And so we pleaded our case, and they provided us with $40,000 to add to the already $35,000 that you and the Riding Center had amassed. So yes, we've signed the contract for the covered arena. We've done some of the preliminary work already. The space is now cleared.
That's exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be huge because, correct me if I'm wrong, but therapy is progressive, right? So if you have to take a month off of therapy,
Right.
you're regressing potentially,
Yes.
right?
Well, and the progress that our kids make, either they stay where they're at or regress, but they don't, or maintain. But it's very hard to do that when you don't consistently have classes. A lot of the times we have 3-4 classes in a row, and then we have to skip one because it's raining, or maybe we have to skip 2 because it's raining, or it's rained so much that the arena's underwater and we can't safely have it. So this would be fantastic, even if it's just for the riders, to be able to come consistently. Their progress is going to be so much more on an even keel and progressive because they won't have to do this with interruptions. They'll be doing this uninterrupted. On the other side of that coin is, even though we only charge a very small nominal fee, not being able to have it, even though...
Sure, you're losing a little revenue.
Right. So we were also looking at the revenue part of it, and it will give us a lot more stability financially.
So the horses were still eating when they weren't doing lessons? They still feeding?
Sometimes I wish I had a hardware store where I could just say, okay, the hammer stays right here on the wall, and the next morning it'll still be there.
Right.
You don't have to feed it, you don't have to clean up after it, but that's not the case with horses.
Speaking of cleaning up after the horse, you have a special event coming up in the not too distant future.
Right,
You want to tell
and
folks
we're not
about
going to
that?
pick that up until we actually have a winner. We have the plop drop coming up on October 22nd. It is what it sounds like. We draw 400 squares in the arena, and they're not small squares. They're 6.5 feet by 6.5 feet, so it's a pretty big.
So it's like
square.
a football pool grid.
Yes, it's got 400 squares. It's like horse bingo. You buy a square for $10, and at the designated time between 12 and 4, we release the horse. Actually, we have 2 sets, so we'll have 2 winners of $1,000. We have a pink plopper and a blue plopper. You can buy a ticket for the pink board or the blue board or both. And And if you are the lucky winner, if the drop gets plopped on your square, you win $1,000.
All right. So that sounds kind of disgusting, but you know, fun for everybody.
Actually,
I'm sure.
The funniest part is people can come to the event. You don't have to be there.
Oh, see, I think you should have to be out on the field to win. Like that should have to be on your shoes.
Well, you know, horse manure does not stick to your shoe. I don't know what the scientific reason for that is, but if you
stand corrected.
Cow, dog, and cat, if you step on that, you're wearing it. But horse manure doesn't stick to your shoe.
Learn something new every day. One other special event I know around Christmas, you have an event that I went to last year, took my family, I thought was great. You want to let people know about that?
Yes, it's called Christmas in the Crevasse. We have 5 acres on the farm that we dot with over 70 to 80 wire frames that have Christmas lights on them. And we pull a hay wagon with a tractor through the 5 acres. It's a fundraiser for the Riding Center. We call it Christmas in the Crevasse. You get a little history lesson about a crevasse. A lot of people don't know what a crevasse is or what the historic significance is of a crevasse. It's $5 for anybody over the age of 3. Anybody under, I think 2 and under, it's $3 to come.
It was a nice event. We had a good time, and I encourage everybody
nice.
to go, so I'm glad you're doing that again.
Yep.
Last things, if folks are listening and they want to get in touch with you, they want to volunteer, they want to donate, they want to help, how do they do that?
The best way is via email, Anita, ANITA, @GNOTRC. You can also call the farm, but we're so busy on the farm that we're not really good about answering the phone. You can leave a message, but we really prefer email because it's a lot faster for us and a lot more accurate. Sometimes it's really hard to hear people's phone numbers. They tend to swallow the last couple of numbers when they leave the message, so email is preferred. Gotcha.
Well, thank you for everything you do. It's a non-duplicated service, which is our jargon way of saying there's nobody doing what you do in the area, and changing somebody's life by going from not walking to walking has got to be phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's the beginning of the new year and time to start with those resolutions. What better way to start than with the Get Fit United Way program? In this program, participants go through 12 weeks of training and eating healthier. But what really goes on during that time? On the first day, participants meet with their trainers and receive their 24-hour access keys for Anytime Fitness. From there, they go through a 1-hour health class, 2 days of boot camp, and a day of group gym training during the 12 weeks. After the end of the 12 weeks, everyone who participated receives discounted Anytime Fitness memberships to continue their training.
Here to speak with us about the only battered and homeless women's shelter in St. Charles Parish is Shirley Sims from Alpha Daughters. Shirley, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It's always good to see you. I was thinking it might be interesting for the audience to hear a little bit about how you started your organization. How did you feel called? What story is there that led you to form this?
John, thank you for having me here today. In 2004, I retired from Entergy operation. I worked at Waterford 3 for 24 years as a manager. And my plans was to sit back and relax, travel, do the things that a normal person does when they retired. Well, I got a divine intervention from God. He woke me up one morning and he started talking to me about his daughters that are crying every night because they have nowhere to go. And his words to me, just like I'm talking to you, was, I want you to open up a shelter so that you can house my daughters that are victims of domestic violence, my daughters that have been molested, my daughters that have been thrown away. And my thinking at that time, how can I do this? I have never been a victim per se myself. But then he reminded me that I grew up in a house where domestic violence was every weekend. It was like a ringside seat on Fridays, my stepfather beating my mother. So I grew up in that environment. And this happened in 2007. Did I do it right away? No, because I was really fearful because I didn't know anything about how to get this together. Well, in 2008, pressure from the Lord, my conscience, we went into operation, and we got incorporated in 2008, and we opened up Alpha Daughters of Zion organization to house victims of domestic violence.
So what services, tell us about those. What are you providing?
We provide shelter, a place where they can come and be safe. We offer them counseling. It's not mandatory, only if they volunteer for we provide for them. We provide them referrals for housing, daycare if they need it. We try to help them to get employment. Some may need to get their GED, so we offer that to them. So it's basically anything that they may need when they come there. Because you have to imagine, when a woman comes to us, she's usually coming with just the clothes on her back and carrying some children with her. So she has nothing. So we basically provide her everything that she needs when she and her kids come that night. We have food. We always have something in the freezer. If they come at night, we always have something in the freezer where we can take out and warm for them in a microwave or something like that. But we provide everything that they need to make them comfortable and safe.
I'm sorry, I goofed up there. I'm trying to think what I was, let me think, where was I going to go? Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. So I know you have a shelter, but you also have an office space.
Yes.
Tell us about where your office is.
Well, we just moved into a new facility. We're in the Keller Center, in the Care Center. And we're located at 171 Keller Street in Hahnville. And this is working out real well for us, John. I mean, this is like, it's like a Christmas in July for us, because we have available for our clients now pro bono lawyers that are there 2 days a week that provide legal services for our clients if they need them. We have the YAP program, which is a youth empowerment program there for our clients that have problems with their children. Red Cross is there, and a juvenile court center is there. So we have all these resources now at our beck and call, when before we were in a place where we had to send them all over the parish to try to get this kind of services. But now we're in one location, so it's one-stop shopping, and I'm so happy about that.
That's right.
It provides us with a larger avenue also, because now we have a separate area where we can do training. We have a separate area that when a mother comes in for counseling and she has children, we have a separate area where we can have the children play where they don't disturb the mother. So it is really an advantage for us because it gives us more of what we didn't have before.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you this. I'm just curious if, a victim that's out there that is desperate and looking for a place to go, they can call you directly, correct, at the office?
Yes.
My question, though, is what if you have a coworker, you have a sister, you have somebody that you suspect or what advice do you have if I have a coworker or a relative that I suspect is a victim, and how to talk to them about that and how to refer them, if you will?
Well, first of all, you have to see if that person is really willing to open up and talk. And that they're willing to open up and talk. My advice to them is that there's help for you and you don't have to live that way.
It's a good way to put it.
I know a place that can help you, but it's up to you to make the decision. We've had situations where people thought that domestic violence was just something natural in the family. They didn't think it as being serious or nothing like that. But we had to show them what our domestic violence wheel, all the different cycles of domestic violence. And we had one young lady, I gave her the wheel, which is like a sheet of paper like this, and I asked her to look at the wheel, and I asked her, I said, now show me where you are in this wheel. And she pointed to every avenue on the wheel. In the middle of it says domestic violence.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. If folks are listening and they want to assist, they want to volunteer, they want to donate, what are your needs in terms of volunteers, or how do they get in touch with you?
Our biggest need right now is to have devoted board members that have a passion for the organization and a passion to help us to grow more. We are in desperate need of a larger shelter, and we have been doing fundraisers to try to help with this. But we need board members that know how to go out and talk to the public and let them know that there's a need for this in the parish, that we need the funding to help us to raise the money. So those are the kind of things we're looking for. We're looking for someone that's really committed to the cause.
You mentioned commitment in your own personal commitment, right? I mean, feeling a calling. Obviously, you've got a strong, faith. Do the clients or do the board members have to be a member of a particular religious faith?
No.
Okay.
It's open to anybody. Because, I look at it like this. It's like a gumbo, John. We all have different ingredients, and we pour it into that gumbo, but the gumbo still comes out tasting like gumbo. Okay?
Which is a good plug for the Battle for the Paddle on October 6th. That's an aside. That's a good analogy. So I'm fascinated with your story, though, and I know you brought a copy. You have written a book, correct? You want
Yes.
to tell us about that?
My book is called You Don't Know My Story. And this is the divine intervention from the Lord also. The Lord instructed me to write about my experience as being a child of a mother that was a victim of domestic violence. I'm talking about the early 60s, where domestic violence was a family thing,
Don't talk about it.
Don't talk about it. You get your licking, but you keep on kicking, and you keep it private. And by writing this book, I'm letting people know that there's hope. There's help out there if you really want it. And some of the mistakes I've made in my life, was because of how I grew up. And it's in the book. It tells about the good, the bad, and the ugly part of Shirley. Okay. That's what it does. But everyone that has read my book, John, has come back and told me how my book is really talking about their lives.
Oh, they see themselves.
They see themselves,
Sure.
Yes. And not only women are reading my book. I have had men come back to me and tell me the same thing. Said, Shirley, this book talks about my life. This book talks about things that I would never have talked about that happened to me as I was a young person.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think was a phrase you used about your life. And I've only known the good. You and I have known each other for the audience's benefit since about the time when you started your organization.
Right.
And, I just, on a personal note, I think you've done a tremendous job. And, God can send a message, but you got to have a good messenger.
That's right.
So good
right.
for you for,
That's right.
having the courage to go forward. So thank you so much for your time today.
John, thank you for having me here. And again, I love Alpha Daughters. It is a passion with me. I had one person told me that they felt threatened by me because I was so compassionate about my organization. And I told that person, don't feel threatened. That's just how I am, because I believe in this organization, and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this organization.
Well, I believe in it too. So
Thank you.
you. Thanks again for joining us for this month's episode of Living United. We hope you've learned a little about United Way of St. Charles and the important work we're doing in St. Charles Parish. Anyone can make a difference in our community, no matter how small. If you're interested in learning more about anything you've seen today, please call our office. We're passionate about St. Charles Parish, and we would be happy to continue the conversation with you about making our community a better place to live and work. Remember, this is your community. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united.
Thank you.